So, a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, we saw some of the dust settle from the trade deadline, players that were on the move started their journeys with their new teams, and the All-Star festivities finally arrived, where things like the dunk contest and the three-point shootout really lived up to the hype, so of course we have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now, so if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. As the 2023 NBA season continues on, PrizePicks is the best and easiest way to play daily fantasy to stay engaged on all of the excitement. All you have to do is pick between 2 and 6 players and the over or under on their projections, and you can win up to 20 times your original entry. Choose between points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made, fantasy points, and more, plus you can even make mixed sports entries, so if you happen to be a fan of football, baseball, soccer, or anything else, PrizePicks has you covered. When you play at PrizePicks, you're also not competing against anyone else, it's simply you versus the projections available. For today's All-Star game, I'm looking through and considering playing Anthony Edwards to score over 13.5 points, Donovan Mitchell to score over 17.5 points, and LeBron James to make over 2.5 threes. By going down to the link in the description of this video and using promo code REFERENCE when you sign up, you also get a deposit match bonus of up to $100. Once again, thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Real, and he says that the Grizzlies are going to be first round exits this year in the playoffs and are in fact not fine in the West. So, a few months ago, Grizzlies All-Star and leader Ja Morant said in an interview that he wasn't afraid of any of the contenders around him and that he is, quote, fine in the West, and people took that quote and ran with it. Admittedly, they were one of the hottest teams in the league at the time that he said it, and objectively, they had plenty of reasons to feel that confident with how wide open the Western Conference was looking. But then, after that comment, the Grizzlies went on to lose 7 of their next 8 games, and a lot of their momentum stalled, which led to a lot of ridicule directed their way after seeming so cocky. It kind of felt like karma immediately hit them, but in the grand scheme of things, they are still the team with the second best record in the Western Conference, so they do still absolutely fall into the contender category. But a lot has changed in the last 2 months that will undoubtedly shake up the comfortability of the Grizzlies that they may have been feeling when those comments were made. The trade deadline this year saw more big names on the move than we've seen in a while, and unfortunately for Ja Morant, most of the biggest moves sent players that were big-time playmakers out west to bolster squads that will be hunting Memphis down when May and June roll around. Kevin Durant went to Phoenix to rejuvenate their title hunt, Kyrie Irving went to Dallas to give Luka Doncic the first legitimate star-caliber teammate he's ever played with, and the Clippers were the most active team of all, adding quite a few contributors to round out their rotation, so now all of a sudden, the race in the West is heating up. On top of that, despite the fact that they're currently in just 9th place in the conference, it's impossible to count out the Warriors from the hunt as long as they get fully healthy by the time the playoffs roll around. The talent pool in the West is back to being rock solid, but health will determine a lot of different factors, so if the Grizzlies end up having to face a team like the Warriors or the Mavericks in the first round, I would probably pick against them, resulting in that first round exit mentioned in the original take, but in all likelihood, I think they will get a matchup that they can win in the first round, but then in the second round, get eliminated by a top-tier contender. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Justin, and he says that Giannis should undoubtedly be the MVP at this point of the season, and then he goes on to list a bunch of his rationale behind that statement that you can read on the screen. So, once again, the MVP race is heating up, and once again, Nikola Jokic is actually the one the media are leaning towards giving it to for a 3rd season in a row. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is pretend that Nikola Jokic is undeserving of the award, because he absolutely is deserving deserving of it, as he's leading the way for a top team in the Western Conference while putting up monstrous numbers across the way, but from a historical standpoint, it does bother me a little bit that the goalposts have moved a ton for how the voters treat him compared to other all-time greats. For context, neither Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who are inarguably the two greatest players of all time, have ever won the MVP award in 3 straight seasons, and I'll let you know right now that they both got snubbed in their potential 3rd years in a row of taking the award home because of quote-unquote voter fatigue. Jordan won MVP in 1991 and 1992, and then in 1993, he was even better than he was in those 2 years, as he once again led the league in scoring, putting up more points in that 1993 season than he did those prior 2 years, yet they gave the award to Charles Barkley instead. Same applies to LeBron James, who won it in 2009 and 2010, but in 2011, the award went to Derrick Rose, even though LeBron's individual production cleared him across the board. So what I'm getting at is that the whole idea of voter fatigue has applied to some of the best players the league has ever seen, but for some reason they don't apply the same rules to Jokic, despite there being a ton of other worthy MVP candidates such as Giannis Antetokounmpo, as originally mentioned, and Joel Embiid, who are both producing at an otherworldly rate while winning games for their teams, while also holding things down on the defensive end. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Ryan, and he says that the player that the Brooklyn Nets need to get their team back on top is none other than Russell Westbrook. Now, as is definitely the case with many of you watching this right now, my initial reaction to this take was that this person is crazy. However, if there was ever a situation most suited to Russell Westbrook and his skill set, it's hard to disagree with the idea that it's Brooklyn. Russ got traded to Utah at the trade deadline, and they're still figuring out amongst themselves whether or not they actually want to keep him or buy him out. Then, if he does get bought out, there have been a few rumors about who would even want to pursue adding Russ to their roster on the buyout market, but the Nets haven't necessarily been one of them. Yet, honestly, I kind of like the fit there. The Nets right now are chock full of 3-and-D wing players, along with a few decent scoring guards like Spencer Dinwiddie and Cam Thomas, but they don't really have someone who can orchestrate an offense as a playmaker or passer. Russ may be erratic in that regard, but he is still a very capable and willing passer and an aggressive driver of the basketball, and even though Russ's defense isn't great, in Brooklyn he'd be surrounded by length and switchability on that end in order to do a better job hiding his weaknesses, unlike the roster that the Lakers put together. I'm not saying that Russ puts the Nets over the top or anything close to the sort, nor do they become title contenders with him, but I think there is a decent chance that they would be a better team with him, and they don't plan on rebuilding anytime soon, so why not? And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes we discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.